Hello everybody and welcome to an episode of Kevin Creatives. Check out my custom real grade Evangelion EVA 1, and this is going to be a little different. It's not going to be a standard Gundam or anything. Nothing from the Gundam universe at all. It's not even from a show I've ever even seen. So we got a real interesting one here. We snagged a good one, boys. Reel them in. We got ourselves a biter. But anyways, guys, as you can tell, I'm very excited to go over it just because I think I did an exceptional job. Let's just get that out of the way right now. This one's a beauty. I'm not really all that familiar with purple and green. I mostly do Gundams and stuff like that. There's not a lot of that in those designs, and if they are, they're usually pretty muted. Let's just get into it. Like I said, I've never seen this show before. Aesthetically, it's not grabbing me, so I'm just not going to get into it. I think the EVAs are really cool as like a Super Sentai monster. If this was something that I saw in Power Rangers, I'd be all for it. I think that'd be a cool toy. But as far as like a piloted mech, I like things to be a little bit more blocky, chunky, missiles, cannons, stuff like that. Big old guns. I mean, this does have a cool gun, but you know what I mean. But that's why I actually really like this one, because even though I'm not the biggest fan of it aesthetically, it really grabbed me. Just as a model kit, I liked it. I had a good time with this. I actually was tempted to get another one. I'm going to be honest. I'm just going to say it. Almost wanted to get two. Still, at the end of the day, I had fun. It was a good time. What can I say? So anyways, let's just get into the model kit itself. To start things off, I was debating whether or not to go full gunmetal for the darker parts, but then I decided, you know what, let's just do some of the parts that are more mechanical in that gunmetal, and then we'll kind of leave the outer suit as a blackish color. Even the inner thighs I could have done with gunmetal, but I said, you know what, let's just leave that as the black part. Let's make it more cohesive. I didn't really want to break this one up too much. This is more of a organic design. It's not very mechanical. It's not a big blocky robot. It's a lot more of a humanoid, just fleshy creature. I wanted to keep that in mind as I painted this up, so I decided to leave things a bit more uniformed in that regard. So that's why things are more on the pastel colors rather than inner frame gunmetal colors. And I think I made the right choice in that. I think this came out pretty solid, especially the shading and highlighting I did with the blacks. It's really hard to highlight those colors. I've been getting some good practice with darker colors, especially with things like the Sinanju this year, EVA unit. I just did the Skywarp, the Furai Skywarp. That's pretty much mostly black. And there's been a few others, so I've gotten some good practice in, so I do have a good handle now. I think overall it came out pretty well. I primed up the black pieces in just standard Gaia Notes black primer. I think that's a great way to go. It's been pretty smooth. It's a very nice paint to use because you don't have to work too much with it. It's pretty smooth as it is. You just put in a little bit of thinner just to even things out, and it just goes on so nicely. I love it. And what's nice about it is, like I said, since it's so smooth and all that, you don't have to add anything on top. It makes for a great base if you're going for black. If you're trying to make your kit black, just get yourself some black primer, and then from there, just to highlight things, I just used a couple of different dark grays. Basically, I just anything that said dark gray on it, or just looking at the bottle, if it was just like a darker gray, I mixed that together, probably with a little, just a hint of black in there just to smooth things out. Because black is so pure of a color, even if you go with just a straight dark gray, it is super noticeable. It's gonna highlight like crazy. It's gonna change the effect that you're going for. That was a big concern, was I didn't want this to come off as gray. I wanted to make sure this was a black suit, but it just had a highlighted effect onto it. So you got to be careful there, I've noticed. And I think this came out pretty solid. It's just a matter of technique. It's a combination of making sure to use the right colors as well as a proper technique with your highlighting and shading, so that way you don't go overboard on the whole part. You want to really keep it on specific areas of the part, so that way it feels like an accent rather than just the color as a whole. And then next up, we did the red bits. There wasn't too much red to be had on this kit, so that's nice. I like when there's just a few accent pieces. It just makes it for a quicker build. You can still have that flare of color, but it doesn't take a lot of time to get the work done, so big fan of that. I think that came out pretty nicely. So as per my usual style, what I did was I just used a red brown to start with, and then once I had that as the base, I went over it again with a little bit of highlighting, with this time the Mr. Color Gundam red. I wanted this to be red, but I didn't want it to be a pure red. Like I said, this is an organic design. It's not quite mechanical in every aspect, especially with the mouth and everything. So I didn't want it just to come off as like a bright, vibrant red. I wanted it to be a little bit more dulled, and I just thought thought that the Gundam red was kind of there. It's not meant to be too vibrant or anything. It's meant to be just plain red. Really can't complain. I think between the red-brown underlayer and then that red on top with the highlighting and shading involved, I think it came out pretty solid. When I look inside the mouth, it feels like gums and a tongue and all that. I mean, it's not going to be the most one-to-one, but at the same time, I wanted to keep things a little bit more gruesome. Like I said, this is supposed to be a kind of more grotesque looking design, very Power Ranger Super Sentai monster, so that's why I didn't want to make it like a pink mouth. I wanted to have kind of a bloody red. The yellow and orange bits on this came out crazy good. I am over the moon with this. I think the colors here pop wonderfully. For this design in particular, I couldn't really settle on, is it orange, is it yellow? So I just decided, because this is something so different from everything else, it can kind of be whatever it ends up being and it'll still work. And it looks so good. I think a combination of the orange for the base layer and then highlighting it with orange yellow on top, so that way it would still blend very well, just worked out so perfectly. And I couldn't be happier. This was kind of what I've been trying to do for a long time with my Gundam model kits. I haven't been able to find that nice little middle zone between yellow and orange for highlighting and stuff. And I think this is kind of it. It has a very nice macaroni color to it, you know, very cheesy. So I'm happy with it, especially for this very dominant purple and green design. I think this orange and yellow really pairs well with the whole palette, so couldn't be happier with that. I think it looks pretty much perfect. I'm just gonna say it looks perfect. The green. Ooh, this green, I was really not sure how to go about it. I didn't know if I wanted it to be very neon. I didn't know if I wanted it to be kind of just subtle, but I decided, you know what? We're going with that neon vibe. And it's funny because when I look at pictures of just the arm plates by themselves before it's put together and all that, when you just have them laying on a table, they look like snow peas. And it's perfect. I don't know. It works. What can I say? It looks pretty spot on. So what I did for that was just standard green. Not a bright green, not a dark green, not a battleship green, not a forest green. This was straight green. I did that as the base layer. And then for the highlighting layer, I did a yellow green. Like I said, perfect. Could not have been more perfect. Could not have been more perfect. This is like the quintessential vibrant green. If I'm ever gonna do a bright neon type green again, I'm gonna definitely do this. The only thing I would add on, not for this kit, but just in general, if I really want to push it for the vibrancy, is use like a fluorescent green on top of this. I would definitely do this to start with, and then just one extra layer of fluorescent green if I really want to push it. For this one, I didn't want it to be quite that bright. I just wanted to have that kind of feeling of like a bright neon green without actually having the total effect, if that makes any sense at all. And then the purple, I was worried. This was the first time I had ever done this type of purple. I've only ever done Master Gundam and then the GP10, what is it, Raise 10, whatever. Those have very dark bluish purples. This is a much more vibrant neon type of purple that I was trying to go for. I was really not sure how to go about that as well, because even pictures that I looked up online for references had a very dark grimacing purple for it. I wasn't 100% sure if I wanted to go that route, because I think the neon green that I went with would have really popped off of that. But at the same time, I think that keeping this in a lighter purple, I think it would have really fit well with it. They would have reflected off each other very nicely, and I think in this case it worked, because again, this is a much more organic design to it. I think having it be a lighter color just kind of works for me. I don't know how to explain it, but this purple with this green, just, oh, so lovely. All I did for that was I used, again, just straight purple from Mr. Color. It's just purple, nothing special about it. Use that as the base coat. Then I used the Mr. Color Gundam purple. I think it's for like the DOMs. I'm not really sure on that. What I had to do there was mix the two together, because originally I was going to try going straight out of the bottle, but it was way too bright. I didn't like that, because the problem is if you go too bright when you're using the same colors just at a lighter tone, it almost looks white, and that's not what I wanted. I didn't want it to come off as like a white color, which is, I know it's kind of weird to say, because when you look at the bottle, it's clearly a lavender purplish color, but like I said, because I had that just straight purple undertone, the color combination was, to my eye, coming across as white. And so what I had to do is just slowly add in regular purple just to balance things out and darken it up just a little bit. I wanted it to be highlighted, and I wanted it to be noticeable, but I didn't want it to be in your face. So I got myself a nice balance of the two. I mixed the colors together between just having that underlayer of purple and then just the technique of making sure that things were highlighted mostly in the middle while still keeping that outer edges darker, the shading there. It came out just ooh, especially for the fact that this is, again, I'm going to say it a few more times, it's a very organic, humanoid, muscular aesthetic. I think it just works. All the shapes and the curves and everything with the shadows going on. Woo! This is a good looking model kit. I really outdid myself with this one. Not gonna lie, there's plenty of mistakes. Let's just not pretend like there ain't. But in terms of the paint job, I'm very happy. This is a step in the right direction, let me tell you. And then for the gunmetal colors, nothing too crazy. It's my typical just gunmetal with silver, and that's just kind of how it is. I just kind of balance it out. I used, in this case, the Mr. Alclad. I'm really liking that. The Mr. Alclad gunmetal has been working really well as a base layer for mixing colors in. Because the Alclad paints are already super thinned, you don't really need to add any thinner to it, so it's really nice. So I just use that. I poured that into the bottle, and then in this case, I used the Super Titanium 2 from Mr. Color and just added that in until I was happy with the mixture. There you go. Didn't have to add any thinner or anything because there was already a lot of thinner with that gunmetal Alclad. It kind of balanced things out. What can I say? The color came out beautifully. It has a very mechanical feel to it, and it looks really cool on that chest plate, the back of the head, and then the spinal parts, the bony spine. Ooh, that looks good. I was slightly concerned about the mouth plates. Those are also in that gunmetal color. I was very tempted to change that into a metallic lavender color. And the reason being was both in pictures I looked online for reference, as well as the box itself. If you look at the 3D digital image they have on the box art, the pieces themselves are molded in the dark gunmetal, but if you look at that picture, it has a very much more lavender metallic color to it. So I wasn't sure if I wanted to go that way, and then like I said, I looked at pictures online and it seemed like they were kind of going that way with the show as well. So I just decided, screw it, because this is a real grade and they are kind of balancing things out between the mechanical and the organic, I'm just gonna leave it as is and can't complain. At the end of the day, there was no wrong answer. It was just a matter of what did I want to do, because if I had done that lavender metallic color, it definitely would have stood out more and been more unique, because like I said, the parts out of the box are already gunmetal, so you're going to see a lot more of that. But I said screw it, it looks fine, we're going to stick with it. And then for the pallet rifle, that was just a custom metallic green that I just made up. I believe I took the titanium silver Mr. Color and then just clear green and mixed them together until I had a nice dark solid military green, and then there you go. And then I added some copper accents to the gun as well. I could have gone a little bit deeper and added a few more accents, but I didn't want to get too crazy and make this too much of a busy design. You gotta learn where to balance things out. This already had gunmetal color, green, copper, and then there was that metallic yellow piece as well, so didn't want to get too crazy. But overall, couldn't be happier with how this came out. And then I even took it a step further, and of course I had to paint the teeth. How are we not gonna have this with teeth molded in and just leave them blank? And I'm very, very happy with how that came out. Couldn't be happier. Really couldn't. So what I did is I took some enamel paints, because of course if we're going to do some hand painting, it's always best to go either enamel or acrylic. In my case, I prefer enamel. I think they just adhere better. You do have to worry about the oils from your hands rubbing them off, so that is, I will say, something to be careful about. But in this case, because I did a flat coat on top of it, we didn't have to worry that much. But what I did is I just took white and yellow and I just kept mixing them together until it was just looking like a bony, just marrow yellowish white. Because I didn't want to do just straight white. It would have been way too clean if I had done straight white. Again, this is supposed to be a very creepy looking design. I wanted to be a bit more organic and realistic, and then I just applied it very carefully with a paintbrush, and man, it looks so good. It looks like teeth. Between the colors and the cleanness of the paint job, I just couldn't be happier. I added a couple of silver accents as well, just where I thought they were needed. I think I mostly did that by hand with a couple of masked off areas, but I think it came out pretty solid. And then I also bought some third-party water slide decals. Didn't want to go too crazy. Again, this is a very organic design. I didn't want to have a bunch of warning decals all over the place, so just where I thought they could really make things stick out, where if it looked like a bit of a blank spot, if it basically looked like the part was designed to have some sort of decal on it, that's where I added it. So there's a couple on the shoulders, couple on the back. They have those on the forearms. Makes me think of like a tattoo. Evangelion Test 1. I think that looks really sick. It came out really clean on top of the knees. So overall, couldn't be happier. Last thing I want to say is I didn't just do this just to do it. Like I said, I'm not really a fan of Evangelion. Never seen the show. In terms of the aesthetic, I could take it, I could leave it. So this was specifically made for Jobby the Hong. I'm a big fan of his and his work. He's a very big inspiration to me as just a YouTube type of content creator guy who's just trying to have fun with toys and all that and the hobby and everything, and trying to add some laughs in as well. I wanted to do something nice for him, so I figured he likes Evangelion. There's a real grade EVA unit. Let's make something happen. So I went ahead and did this specifically for him. I had an opportunity to meet him in person at TFCon. That wasn't planned. I didn't know he was going to be there. It was a last minute, hey, I'm going to be there if anyone wants to say hi. Perfect. I have this ready to go. Let's make it happen. So that worked out perfectly. And again, I want to say thank you to Jobby for being such a gracious and wonderful person. It was really cool to meet you. He posted it on his live stream. I did ask if he could wait till he opens up the gift for him on his stream. He was nice enough to do that. He gave it some great airtime, said a lot of good things about it. Thank you again, and until next time, guys, we'll begin. Peace.